Hello everyone. One of my viewers gave me this idea for a video talking about Beatles album covers, mostly from the 70s, maybe some from the 80s and beyond, and which covers were the better covers and which covers were the worst covers. Talking about albums that are compilations when they've compiled a lot of Beatles music together under different kind of headings like love songs, rock and roll songs, movie songs, etc. Also live albums. And I decided to put these together and show them, go over these covers. Doing this gave me some fun because I actually had an excuse to take some of my records off the shelves that I haven't looked at in a while, and actually putting them together and revisiting them. So that was a lot of fun. I did notice that for some reason I could not find a couple of albums that I know I have somewhere in this room, but I pulled out most of them from the physical form, took them out of hiding. Okay, all right. Now I'm going to try to semi-rank these because they're not in strict order from, like, say, least to best, but I tried to do that. So they're not 100%, but they're 95% ranked. Okay, first of all, one of the worst covers of all time, as far as I'm concerned, would be, let's see, this thing here. The Beatles live at the Star Club in Hamburg, Germany from 1962. Now, this is not an official, say, release by Capitol or, Parlophone. The Beatles tried to sue to get this off the market. But it is such an unimaginative, boring freaking cover. The back is a little better. It's got some Beatles photos there. You see the action of the Star Club where they played in Germany. But this is so dull and unimaginative. This came out in 1977. Next up will be this album, which is, you can see it on a black cover that I'm going to show you, but also a white cover. And I have the vinyl of this somewhere, but I couldn't find it. And that's the Beatles Past Masters. There's a white cover sometimes, part two, and part one was a black cover. This one has them all together, both of them, I'll say volume one and volume two together. But again, I don't know what they're thinking when we're talking about Capitol and Apple. Why in the world do they just simply take the Beatles name and logo and think that's good enough? I got to give some credit out there to a lot of bootleggers who, they know how to do imaginative covers and good rare artwork. They know what the fans want better than the real companies do. Yeah, I know it says the Beatles here. This is the best shirt I could find. Give me a break, will you? One of the albums that I could not find was this atrocity, a lousy album from 1982 called The Beatles 20 Greatest Hits. And they took the version of Hey Jude that we all know and love, and they trimmed it down quite a bit on this. But moreover, look at the cover. Same thing as with the Past Masters. Very unimaginative, and just the Beatles name and nothing else. And why do I put this slightly ahead of the Past Masters if I'm going to attempt to rank them? Well, because at least there's some photos and you can see some Beatles action going on in between the letters. That's why I put that up there. All right. Okay, these two things. Rock and Roll Music Volume 1 and Rock and Roll Music Volume 2. All right. Now, why am I putting these up here now? This actually isn't really bad. It's a nice picture, certainly better than the covers that I just showed you. But I don't know, these photos of the Beatles arriving at the airport, I don't know, they're cartoony looking. They're not real photos, they're cartoons. I don't know, they look cheap for some reason. But I think what also bothers me is that there was no way to really differentiate the two. I mean, you got volume 1 and volume 2, they're exactly the same except for the letters, different colors, you know what I mean? Back is no great shakes either. I don't know. So along those lines, we're going to go with the next one that I have here, which is, I think, sometimes the years fail me. I think this is 1980, 82 also. I'm trying to look it up here. Yeah. This one here, what is it called? That Real Music, right? The Beatles Real Music, spelled R-E-E-L, real like a movie reel, you know what I mean? This is actually imaginative. You know, it's got a theater that the Beatles are at for all their movies. This is a creative idea. I gotta say, it's not really horrible. Again, we're using like cartoon images, but there are the Beatles, the way they look in A Hard Day's Night, the way they look at some Help there, George with the hat on from Help, and John from Help. There's a walrus hanging around somewhere, right? There's the walrus going to the movies for Magical Mystery Tour in the center. The back. There's a little more ingenuity here, but still, it looks cheap. All right, in more recent times, I think this was 2016, or they were about, yes, 2016. The Beatles live at the Hollywood Bowl. This now, this is better because you got pictures of the real Beatles here, but I don't know. I don't know if you call it photoshopping, the way it's set up here. You got this huge title up here, because what they're trying to do is make this a soundtrack to the Ron Howard film, 8 Days a Week, the documentary about the Beatles performing live, pretty much. But just the way all these words take up the top. I don't like the composition very much. I mean, the picture is all right, but just the way, I think what ruins it for me is the way the Beatles are situated way below and all this hype is on the top. I think that kind of takes it away from me, which is why I actually prefer the 1977 album. Now, this one, I actually like this cover, and I have maybe a nostalgia bias because when I was 15 years old, I went with my best friend Mike, and at the time he's deceased now, unfortunately, but we went together and to a nice big department store or record store. It might have been Sam Goody. This was out at the time, and it was a big deal to us, teenagers. We thought it was so cool. I like the design, the Hollywood Bowl up there, and the two ticket stubs there. Or ticket that actually, these are not stubs; they're the full tickets, I should say. The back there. Yeah, I like this. I really do. It's simple but effective on this one. Okay, I also like this album, which a lot of people might be surprised at. This is the Beatles Rarities that came out in 1980, which just reminds me, this is the US version of Rarities, okay? And the UK version is one of the worst covers of all time, too, just a plain blue cover that says Rarities and has song titles on it, in like gold letters. I don't have that handy right now, but that's one of the worst album covers too of the Beatles ever, from my 3 cents. But no, I like this, and the nice picture of the Beatles there in the center. This one made it up pretty high, and I really enjoy this one. The Beatles Love Songs. How nice is this? It's got the hype sticker. A lot of these have the hype sticker and the cellophane. That's how I try to collect them. This has never been open. Love that. But I love this photo of the Beatles, and I love it being in gold and representing their love songs and right dead center. I love the brown leathery look. If you can get any of that, I don't know on here. It's like creased. It's like a leather wallet, creased leather looks textured. Really like this cover. All right, now the next one I'm going to show is going to be the most controversial of the bunch, because anybody who's watched my channel, and you'll know this, how I feel about this album cover, and I'm sure there'll be some kind of debate about it going on right now in this video. This is a still sealed copy of the highly underrated cover of the Beatles Rock and Roll Music. I love that shot of the Beatles. I just love, you turn it this way, you turn it over, and there they are in the back, the silver background. Now, I made a video somewhere on this channel. You have to do a search. Put in Mean Mr. Mayo defending Beatles Rock and Roll Music cover or something like that, and you'll find it. But I'll say one thing I do hate are these thumbs. There was no need to put these thumbs on the covers, on the back and front. I have my own thumbs. You have your own thumb, hopefully. When you look at the album, you got your own thumbs on there. A lot of people pick on this album cover, including the Beatles themselves. John Lennon hated this cover. Ringo hated this cover. John offered to do a cover for this album, and Capitol turned him down. And Ringo went on record as saying, John's got more talent than those people at Capitol. He offered to do a cover and all this. But what I like about it is first of all, the photo and the silver. Now, people pick on the words rock and roll music, okay? But because they say that's not the Beatles. The Beatles were not the 1950s. These look like 50s letters. Why did they use those kind of letters? Well, because the way I look at it is that's rock and roll. You know what I mean? It's not that the Beatles themselves were 1950s artists. That's not the point. It's like they're doing rock and roll songs. And when you're trying to find some kind of font or physical items, because inside here we've got things like Coca-Cola and hamburgers and 50s cars. When you're talking about the origin of rock and roll, American rock and roll, which the Beatles loved, it was the 50s. You understand? They're not saying the Beatles are the 50s. They're saying that rock and roll itself as a theme is neon letters and 50s. The one I'm going to show now, I almost made it number one. This could be number one at some point. This is the 1970 compilation. I'm considering it a compilation. Hey Jude, the Hey Jude album. All right. Really nice picture there. I really love the way the Beatles look standing in front of the house there. And the back cover is nice as well. You know, very nice. You know, I love that this particular cover, you know, for younger people at the time, shows that the Beatles weren't just all la-di-da, la-di-da, bubblegum, I want to hold your hand. This is where they start looking tougher and more like, I don't know, more harder rock artists at some points, like Zeppelin or, you know, or The Who, you know, or something like that. That's why I like that cover. Now, of course, the cover that I have left, or covers, would be, this is my number one choice, okay? The red album and the blue album. Okay, now, here's the thing. First of all, this photo is not really anything rare. We had this on the first album, the Please Please Me album, right? That's not a rare photo. But what I like about it is the way they utilize the front, and then the back shows you the Beatles. Oh, you got the young Beatles, 62 to 66, say, roughly 63, right? And then the back cover and the front cover on this one, 67 to 70. Now, again, same thing, you know. You know, it's funny. Too bad Paul didn't have a beard here. You know, Paul clean shaved. The other guy's looking rough and tough. Paul with a beard. Without a beard, I should say. I always loved that in the Get Back footage, you know, what became Let It Be. You know, Paul had a rugged look, you know, in that. I like that. I think it would have helped here. But anyway, that's what I like about this, which I'm putting as my number one choice. What I like is the fact that you flip it and you get the difference. You get this one, Beatles 67 to 70. Flip it over and you get 62 to 66. I love it. If the back covers of these were just plain, it would take a lot away from it. If all you got on these albums was just the photos, respective years, and if the back of these had just been song titles and not the flipped picture, I think that would have made a difference, and it wouldn't have been as cool. That's it. Thank you to my viewer who gave me the idea for this. And what are your opinions? I already know what your opinions are of the Beatles album, Rock and Roll Music. And I don't care what anybody says. I even have this poster advertising the album. I really love it. And in some ways, this is my number one favorite. But hey, I put it number 3, okay? I know what your feelings are on this one. Thank you, everybody. Look forward to seeing your comments.